Hey everyone. Hi, welcome. It's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and I am live with Clay Clark of the ThriveTime show and the Awaken America tour. So welcome, Clay Clark.
Thank you, Miss Naomi, for allowing me to be here with you and your listeners.
We're so glad to have you. So you're a father of four. You've been traveling the country talking to people about liberty issues. And I basically would love to just have you update us about what you've been doing since we last spoke, which was in the middle of the summer, in the middle of your tour.
Well, you know, the reason why we started this tour, I say we, General Flynn and I, was that we wanted to let people know about, the reality, the truth about medical freedom and how that was being extinguished through statistical manipulation, through what we discovered through our research as statistical manipulation. So we have medical fraud, election fraud, and ultimately this thing called the Great Reset. And for anybody out there that isn't familiar with the Great Reset, it is a book written by Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, he's the head of the World Economic Forum. You can buy his book on Amazon. And basically in his book, he advocates the ending of all national sovereignty and the ending of personal property ownership. And he's a big fan of what he calls the fourth industrial revolution, which involves gene editing. He's a big fan of transhumanism. And that's really what this is all about.
So this is pretty scary. When you say General Flynn, for our audience is super diverse and some people know who you mean and some people don't. Could you kindly tell us more about who that is and why?
Yeah. General Flynn was in the military. He was in the U.S. Army for a total of 30 plus years. And when he retired, President Donald J. Trump appointed him to be the 25th U.S. National Security Advisor. And within days of taking that position, after having a 30 plus year squeaky clean record in the Army, he was accused of doing a variety of things. And General Flynn was ultimately pardoned by President Donald J. Trump. But General Michael Flynn, General Michael Thomas Flynn is who I'm referencing.
Gotcha. So you're traveling around warning people, and everything you've just said is, I can't say that I personally can confirm that election fraud has been proven from where I sit. I always believe check every vote, investigate every vote. I don't see why we wouldn't. But I can definitely say, Mr. Clark, that from my research, Klaus Schwab is a real person. This book is a real book. He's actually calling for the Great Reset. I used to think that transhumanism was a nonsensical conspiracy theory, and now I know that indeed psycho oligarchs like Bill Gates, Jeffrey Epstein,
yes,
when he was alive, now deceased Jeffrey Epstein, believe in it, like it, want it. And I'm also aware that gene editing is real and actually highly funded by Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a technology called CRISPR. So you're absolutely right to wake people up to the dangers of this. And I also think, just to kind of validate what you're saying, looking around us right now at the landscape in America, open borders, probably a bioweapons attack, children, abused with masking, scientifically useless masking in school. It's traumatizing them, keeping them from developing good language and communication skills and learning how to be basically Americans. The complete, attack on churches, attack on synagogues, attack on gathering, attacks on town halls, emergency law in 48 states. Like, when you put it all together, yeah, it does really look like we're under attack by people who want to dissolve our sovereignty and who want to kind of do away with Western civilization for a post-human future. So tell me more about what you want to share with me about this.
If it's okay, I have a brief audio clip from Klaus Schwab. Would that be okay if I hit play, just like a 10-second clip?
Go for it.
This is Klaus Schwab, who's on the Charlie Rose show. And Charlie Rose asks Klaus Schwab, what is the Great Reset? What is the fourth industrial revolution? Because Klaus Schwab refers to the fourth industrial revolution and the Great Reset as the same thing. So listen to this audio of Klaus Schwab from Charlie Rose. This is mind-boggling. And if everyone will just listen to it and ask yourself, what is he talking about? It is truly chilling. Here we go.
The difference with fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, Right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has a big impact.
He just said the difference about the fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you do for a living as much as it changes you through gene editing. It changes you. And that's what this is all about. And so if your listeners go to time2freeamerica.com, they can see all of my research where it's documented. But in 2002, the Centers for Disease Control patented the coronavirus transmissible to humans, which means that either A, they patented a bioweapon, or B, they patented nature, both of which are illegal. 2, the Rockefeller Plan was authored in 2010, which I've archived at time2freeamerica.com. You just click on the Great Reset button. You can see in 2010, these nefarious elitists, they created a document called the Rockefeller Plan, which explained in horrific detail how they're going to do this lockstep all throughout the world. And if you say, well, that's not terrifying enough, then they organized an event called Event 201 in 2009, where these nefarious elitist globalists sat down and they actually role-played the implementation of the Great Reset. They actually took the time needed to role-play on video how they would handle it.
Was this the Event 201 that was the same as the one they did in 2019 at Johns Hopkins, or has this been done twice?
Well, Event 201 and if you go to time2freeamerica.com, I've documented everything there. But basically, Event 201 was a conversation they began, and then it got to a level of emboldenment where they thought, let's just video it. I mean, how crazy is that? So while a lot of people have been debating, is this a conspiracy theory? They were role-playing it on video.
Right, I understand. Yeah, and just to update that, Johns Hopkins did actually play out. I mean, I've seen the white paper Event 201 in 2019, which is a kind of hypothetical. They called it SPARS. A SPARS coronavirus gets released around the world, a respiratory virus. They hired a bunch of psychologists and they kind of role played what would happen, in terms of shifting to a world they wanted more. Which is basically the world we're seeing now rolling out for us, in which people really have very little liberty, and humans are subordinated to these oligarchical plans, constant tracking,
right.
Constant intervention in their bodies. So let's talk about conspiracy theories for a minute. I guess you're called a conspiracy theorist. I have been called a conspiracy theorist. My Wikipedia entry has been updated to lead with that.
Nice.
But what is a conspiracy? I really want people to stop being bullied by that epithet, that pejorative, because I've seen and been part of power at the highest levels, as have you, no doubt. And
yeah,
people, the goal of power at the highest levels is to make things happen using multiple actors with no fingerprints. Like, that's just what the lawyers are for. That's what the, deniability is for. That's what the unspoken plans that are not in a memo that can be subpoenaed are for. And this is just how power works. So I want people to, let go of, dropping their inquiries and investigations when they're name called conspiracy theorists. Because look at the last year, Clay, if I may, Mr. Clark. In November, people who were saying this could have been engineered in a lab were called conspiracy theorists. In May, that was documented. In July, people who agreed with Rand Paul, because they'd seen the white papers, that Dr. Fauci funded gain of function research, were called conspiracy theorists. Now in, October, there's a congressional, the NIH has confirmed that they were funding gain of function research. So to me these days, a conspiracy is just something that, official spokespeople haven't acknowledged yet. But let's go on. What kind of reaction have you been having your tour?
Yeah, I want people to understand this as far as the reaction. Bobby Kennedy Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think if you were to describe Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you would say he's politically left of center. Maybe is an accurate statement. And you'd say General Michael Flynn, you consider him as being almost libertarian right of center. And they both agree that the Great Reset is a real thing. And what's happening is, again, the Great Reset is an actual book that is so horrific, so evil, so just terrifying. If it were real, that the average person, they can't handle the cognitive dissonance of hearing about this by themselves. So when they come to the event, they start to go, the comment I hear the most is people say, I knew it. I knew that medical fraud was occurring. Or you'll have doctors that'll come to the event. And I mean, this happens many times. Doctors will come to the event. They'll pull me aside after the event when I'm signing books or meeting people or saying hello. And they'll say, I want you to know I am a doctor at this particular hospital. And it is true that remdesivir is a drug patented by George Soros in China. And it does cause renal failure. And midazolam does suppress the breath. And I talked to one doctor. I said, sir, why would you give people then midazolam and remdesivir if you know that it causes death? And the one doctor said, well, Clay, I'm on the COVID floor. I've never made more money in my life. And I'm trying to pay off debt.
He said that.
He said that. And I thought, that's interesting. And I've heard similar comments from many, many nurses that I've met. Many nurses.
Being paid for are they being paid for? I mean, first of all, A, my head is exploding. But B, I just interviewed Dr. Henry E. Lee yesterday of Stanford Health Freedom. Yes. And he said the same thing. He confirmed, based on firsthand documentation, that there's a $2,000 bonus for every hospital when a death is listed as COVID. So is that the same thing, or how?
Yes. Well, let me walk you through the 2 layers.
Quite inflammatory. How do doctors get paid for COVID death?
Well, the 3 I can confirm, okay? I just can speak to the nurses I've met. One nurse, because when I first heard this, I thought, there's no way. These nurses, if you work on the COVID floor, that's considered higher risk, so you get paid more. So maybe a potential great guest for you would be Erin Olszewski. Erin Olszewski. She's been on Tucker Carlson multiple times. She's a friend of mine. She was a nurse in Tampa, Florida, where apparently COVID's not deadly because nobody died in Tampa at her hospital when they had COVID. They came in, they treated them with budesonide, ivermectin, or hydroxychloroquine. Again, people came into the hospital in Tampa. Erin Olszewski and the doctors treated these people with budesonide, ivermectin, or hydroxychloroquine. And you know what? There were no deaths.
Wow.
And she got hired because word got out. This woman is, like a one-man wrecking crew versus, COVID. So a New York hospital called her. The hospital that hired her in New York, and this is all documented. You can see the Tucker Carlson documentary with her. But she goes up to New York and they say, now here's the thing. We're so excited you're here at the epicenter of the COVID outbreak. You just can't use ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine here or budesonide.
Oh my God.
And she goes, that's what saves lives. They go, yeah, we just can't. So a friend
of mine.
Did
they say why? Did they tell her why?
It's against the CDC protocol, which, by the way, the CDC protocol is controlled by Bill Gates. So she's not allowed to use it. So she wore Google glasses and filmed the entire thing and made a documentary that you can see up there on BitChute or Brighteon, that kind of thing, or Rumble.com. And she was on Tucker Carlson talking about it. Then I have a friend of mine named James. He's an attorney. He lives in New York. And remember, there was all that footage of these hospitals in New York that are overwhelmed. Yes. And so James, a friend of mine, he said, Clay, I'm going to go into the hospital myself, and I'm going to film and just see if they are full. They were completely empty. He said the lobbies are empty, every hall's empty, and they finally asked him to leave, but he was filming everything. Yeah. Another example was
so just jumping in, that's been my experience when I've gone to firsthand to report on hospitals. This happened to my husband and me in Nebraska. South Dakota, because South Dakota was being stigmatized because they weren't locking down, and CNN was reporting, a hospital's overflowing. And we were driving through, we went to the hospitals. They're using footage from a year ago when a lot of people got too drunk and came in with hangovers. It's like the hospital was empty. So, but let's go back to I want to go back and really pin down what you're saying, because we can't, with such hugely impactful and distressing assertions, we really need solid primary source documentation. Yeah. What other evidence do you have that doctors are being, how would a doctor get rich on a COVID floor? They're being paid extra because it's rich.
Well, I can just say the nurses themselves make significantly more money to work on the COVID floors.
So there's an incentive when a patient checks in to run the PCR test at a level that would make that person a COVID.
Correct. Gotcha. And then I interviewed Lindsay Blankenship, who worked at a hospital in Alamosa, Colorado. She shared the same story. I talked to many frontline. So that's how that happens. Now, as far as the hospital making more money, Scott Jensen, who's running for governor now in Minnesota, Dr. Scott Jensen. He's been on Fox as well quite a bit. He confirmed that he shows, he's able to show that hospitals are making more money if they treat COVID patients. They make more money if they put a patient on a ventilator. I mean, all of that is documented. That I would say the best resources to go to would be, you can look up Erin Olszewski. Anybody can find her on DuckDuckGo or Google, and you could look at her information. You could interview her. She could source everything. But Dr. Scott Jensen would be another one. And it's the reality. By the way, Nurse Erin's book, it's called, it's a Simon & Schuster actually book called Undercover. It says Undercover Epicenter Nurse. That's her book, Undercover Epicenter Nurse. And she's documented everything. It's mind-boggling.
I'll take a look. Also, just checking if you can confirm. So Dr. Ely also said that the CDC had changed death certificate reporting so that if people came in dying of multiple things, cancer, multiple organ failure, pneumonia, but they can also, generate or get a positive PCR COVID test, instead of the way it used to be reported that the last condition you had before you died was the cause of death, like multiple organ failure. The CDC changed it so you can move COVID down to be the last condition and the cause of death. Have you heard that from any of the doctors?
Yes. And each of the doctors I've spoken to in person at the workshops has confirmed that. And that's why, the question, people ask me this, Naomi, they say, why do you let people choose their price to come to your event? I mean, it's the only conference I've ever heard of where you can just name your price.
That's
and the reason why I do it is because I want to meet these doctors, much like you do, and I want to hear firsthand what's going on. And so we're seeing many, and Naomi, and there's no exaggeration here, I'm talking about shared of frontline doctors and nurses came out to the event in Tampa.
Wow.
Hundreds of them. And they all they felt like they cathartically needed to connect with each other. It wasn't about me, but so many of these conferences where it's like, today's conference is sponsored by Big Pharma, and it's here to expose the corruption of Big Pharma. You can't have a conference sponsored by Big Pharma that's here to expose the corruption of Big Pharma. It's a disingenuous idea. But people come to this event and they say, I found other people. Mm-hmm. And it is truly disturbing. And that is why, again, people that go to timetofreeamerica.com, they can request those tickets. I just encourage everybody to get out to these. I mean, I'm meeting flight attendants who are telling me, they have to wear a mask and make the passengers wear a mask. And then they say, however, just so you know, my boss who's making us wear a mask never wears a mask.
Wow.
And then you hear another one say the same thing. And pretty soon you have a bunch of them saying, even though they try to keep us isolated, these 20 flight attendants are all having the same story and they all work for different airlines.
It's so important what you're doing. How many events have you done and how many Americans do you think you've reached?
Well, we've had 5 events that we've done in person. I'm just counting here, but in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there were 4,500 people in attendance. Then we went to Tampa, where the church indicated there was close to 9,000 people there. So we'll call it 8. So that's 12,500. And then we went to Anaheim, where there's almost 3,000 people. So we'll call it, 10,000 there.
1,000. You don't have to. I won't make you walk through every.
I'm just saying, we're into maybe 30,000 people that we've reached, in person. But I mean, the Tulsa event alone had 7.1 million people that streamed the event.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So we interview. We cut the presentations into small chunks. If people go to rumble.com and they search for ThriveTime show, you can see each person's presentation as a smaller 15-minute segment, and that's how we do it.
Wonderful. So what is your goal? And is there anything else you want to share with us that you've learned about what's happening around us?
Well, I'll just give your listeners 5 ways to wake up their friends real quick. Okay. So 1, you tell your friend, dear friend, I know you think I'm crazy, but just look up HR 666. And you can see Congress is working on legislation called HR 666. That's not positive. 2, you can look up.
But what's in it? I mean, anything can be HR 666, right?
It is legislation that Congress is putting, which basically is saying that you are criminally insane if you don't buy into the critical race theory.
Oh, that explains a lot. Oh, God, that explains a lot because CDC has. God, that's really bad. I've noticed in the emergency order in New York City, in public health orders, in the CDC mobilizing to get its own police force, basically, that they're adding mental hygiene as
Right.
one of the things that public health looks at.
Yes.
And I kept thinking, what is this focus on critical race theory? What's this focus on critical race theory? And so they're going to set it up so that you are insane if you don't go along with it, and a threat to public health. That's why they're calling racism, and I'm an anti-racist, but that's why they're pushing to call racism a public health emergency. I mean, here in New York State, I believe our new governor, Kathy Hochul, extended the state of emergency on the basis of, the emergency of racism. And racism is a serious thing, but this is lining up the pieces so that if you don't go along with this discourse, you can have your children taken away from you, or maybe arrested.
Away from your children. Yeah, exactly. And that's why, way number 2 to wake up your friends and family, just type in CDC green zones, CDC green zone, the CDC green zone in Google or DuckDuckGo. That is a Nazi-style quarantine camp where they take people who are medically a risk to others or mentally a risk to others.
And that's where that will come in. Okay. I can't verify that without looking at it. The other sources I've looked at. What else do you want people to move on?
Well, I would just say, again, a big factoid number 3 is, Dr. Zelenko is a friend of mine, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko.
What a hero.
And Dr. Jim Meehan is a friend of mine. These are 2 doctors who, between the 2 of them, have now passed 3,000 COVID patients, or between the 2 of them, they've treated now 10,000 plus COVID patients.
Wow.
With only 3 deaths. Wow. So someone should tell me, I mean, these are people, 3 deaths out of 10,000. And Dr. Zelenko was one of the first doctors in America to treat COVID patients. So what is the statistical probability of dying from COVID-19 if you're given budesonide, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine? Somebody out there could do the math, but it's 3 out of 10,000 for those 2.
Right, exactly. Is there anything else before I move on to one other subject I want to cover?
Yeah, I would just say I would encourage everybody to come out to timetofreeamerica.com, timetofreeamerica.com, and see if you can get out to one of the Reawaken America tours, because we're sold out for San Antonio. We've got 50 tickets left. I just hopped on. There was just looking on the ticker. There's 51 tickets left for Dallas in December. And then Arizona, I don't know how many of these we're going to do, but in Arizona, we're now halfway sold out. And I just encourage people to get out to these events, because people like you who are critical thinkers are going to be in the audience. And it really does help when you're around other people that use rational critical thinking skills.
And in addition to just alerting people to these dangers, is there another goal? I mean, are you mobilizing, to pass legislation, or are you, mobilizing to reform the treatment, or what are some takeaways?
I feel like that God's given everybody out there certain talents, time and treasure, certain skill sets. And my skill set is being able to mobilize a large number of people to come to a place and to learn while they laugh just a little bit, just enough to get through it, so you don't end up getting super depressed. That's my skill set. And then I feel like at these events, I try to organize a speaker's dinner and some of these gatherings where the speakers can meet each other, where the attendees can meet each other. And then I'm seeing legislation flow out of that, but I'm not the one orchestrating that. I'm just getting all the key people in the room together.
That's wonderful. And that's why we need to leave our houses, resist these lockdowns, and convene, because you're exactly right. That's what that is the only hope for us now at this point, is face-to-face meeting and joining one another. I just want to add Daily Cloud as a resource. We draft and pass legislation. We have a lawyer on hand who can draft a bill, and so anything you want to bring to us that we can help you with in terms of passing legislation, our platform is set up to do that. Now, let me move on to the last question. You've been so generous with your time. Last time we spoke, we kind of got into a spiritual dimension, and I don't want to neglect that. I'm Jewish. Dr. Zelenko, I believe, is Jewish.
Yep.
You're Christian, from what I understand.
Yes, ma'am.
It's all, all religions are the same, ultimately, is my view. But the more I look at what's happening around us right now, I can't help thinking that this is more than human negativity. It seems like the intelligence that rolled out such an appalling attack on humanity is metaphysically evil. And it seems like the only way out has got to be, drawing on, like, it just seems like a battle of good and evil. And it does seem like Satan, I don't even believe in Satan the way Christians believe in Satan, right? Because it's not part of Jewish cosmology, really. I mean, Shaitan is an entity, but it's not like an embodied satanic force. We don't even have an embodied like definition of hell the way that Christians do. That said, good and evil are real, and it's definitely part of the Old Testament as well, that people are besieged by evil. What is going on spiritually? I mean, what does Dr. Zelenko think is going on spiritually? What's happening to humanity? Why are the forces of evil unleashed on humanity? What are we supposed to do on a spiritual level? Because honestly, when I look at the chessboard, I don't think that mere human intelligence and resources can defeat this. And I, as I was saying before, I don't think we're facing like the clip you played, the audio clip, and it's giving me chills just to say it. That sounded like a satanic voice, that had all the energy of that Nazi energy, like they will just take over as a human species and that will all be better for everybody. So what's going on spiritually in your view?
Well, let me just say this for anybody out there. First off, if anybody out there, if you do go to timetofreeamerica.com and you click on the button that says the truth about the transhumanism agenda, you can see it there. Okay, the transhumanism agenda. And again, I realize if you're somebody who doesn't recognize the New Testament of the Bible as being a real book or accurate, then it won't matter necessarily. But I'm just going to tell you this: on the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verses 16 through 18, John was exiled on the island of Patmos, the Apostle John, and he wrote, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, save that he had the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's the wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. The number would be 666. So John warned us to look out for the number 666. Congress is working on legislation now, H.R. 666, and legislation H.R. 6666. And the super nefarious Bill Gates is working on a patent with a publication number WO 2020-060606, which would make it scientifically possible for no man to buy or sell without a COVID-19 passport or his technology. And Google Chrome conveniently changed their logo to be 3 interconnected sixes. Is that all great one big coincidence? I don't know. All I can just tell you is I do believe we're in a battle of good versus evil, and I encourage everybody to make sure that you are right with God. I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. If somebody out there doesn't, the one thing about Christianity that I think is exciting is I'm not mad at you if you're Jewish, and I'm not mad at you if you're Muslim, and I'm not mad at you. I feel like, you got to get right with God, and you've got to consult, God. And I believe that the Bible is the irrefutable word of God. But if someone doesn't believe that, that's okay. I'm not going to, the one thing about being Jewish or Christian is we don't believe you should round up your opposition and put them in a concentration camp.
Thank you for that.
Elitists, they want to put everybody in concentration camps who does believe in God.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more, if I may, one more minute before we go. I mean, that's really creepy, and I honestly don't know what to make of it. But stepping out of the kind of Revelations framework for a minute, because respectfully, you may be 1,000% right, and I'm open. And I think Jesus is a great, great rabbi. He's my personal rabbi. I'll just say that. Like, that's different from being Christian. But stepping away from Revelations, because many, generation after generation, people interpret Revelations as applying to their time that they're in. Maybe it's true. It certainly looks bad out there, but what are we supposed to do? Like in Revelations, basically you kind of get right with God, and then there's a rapture, and then the saved are saved. That's not, in my cosmology, that's not very meaningful. What do people listening to this who may be atheist or agnostic or Muslim or Hindu, like what is happening? Like, what are human beings supposed to do in a more humanistic but spiritual frame? Like, if you can't quite go with there will be a rapture, what are best practices? What do you think God is doing this for? Like, maybe this is a very Jewish question.
I believe we're living through the fulfillment of prophecy, which is always wrong until it proves out to be right. But for people out there who don't believe in the book of Revelation, I would just say that it is a time where when, all of the earthly solutions are gone, the only solution when you look to your right and you can't go to the right, can't go to the left, you got to look up to God, because I really do not see, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm just saying, as I thought you had indicated previously, I don't believe there's a lot of earthly practical solutions to stop this invasive plan to take away all American freedom, all worldwide freedom, and to force us into quarantine camps, the transhumanism agenda, because they've been working on it for so long. And if you go to timetofreeamerica.com and you click on the button that says the truth about renting religious leaders, the Pope organized a transhumanism conference.
No.
Yes.
No.
T.D. Jakes, the most evangelical pastor, get ready. He's teaming up with Dr. Fauci to push the COVID-19 vaccines. Rick Warren from Purpose Driven Life. People say, I love Rick Warren. He's a Christian. Rick Warren has said openly, and this is all cited at timetofreeamerica.com, he's gone on video and talked about how great the World Economic Forum is, the organization started by Klaus Schwab. It's calling for the ending of your personal property ownership and sovereignty.
That's super creepy. And I know that $500 million went from the last COVID bill to flow to community groups for COVID education. That means buying up churches and synagogues. I mean, my own synagogue won't let the unvaccinated in the building, and they're not services anymore. And it's it's the end of Judaism, just through some, hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands that flowed down into these churches and synagogues and probably mosques and every religion. But that is very heartbreaking. All right. Well, you've been really generous with your time. People who want to know more should go to.
You want to go to timetofreeamerica.com, timetofreeamerica.com. And everything I've said on today's show is cited. And I would tell everybody out there, if you're ever listening to something that I say and it can't be fact checked or proven, I encourage you to disregard what I'm saying. But I encourage everybody, don't make it about me or some of the people that have maybe gained more traction in this truth movement. Just research yourself and find the truth, because only the truth will set us free. And I do believe that's accurate.
Clay Clark, thank you so much for speaking to me for a second time. And thank you for doing everything you can to, bring these super scary, but, abundantly documented threats that we face to America, and give some people some options to join together in community. Have a wonderful day. And thank you so much. Everyone, check it out, support them, and look at what they're doing. All right.
Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you.